Good afternoon. My name is Alejandra Munoz. This is going to be my, I think, sixth take. So let's hope this works. Um, I want to be whole. I want to claim myself to be a woman. Mexican, Mexicana, Mexican American, yes. Not just American. I am a student. I am a working class woman. I am a foreigner of Mexican nationality. But wait, I'm also a naturalized US citizen. How does that work for you? I am a Spanish speaker. I am an English speaker. I am also a Spanglish speaker, and I am a great code switcher. I read an article called The Theoretical Subject of This Bridge Called My Back by Norma Alarcón. She explains how gender is not the only concept behind feminist theories. Rather, theories are depicted by complex, specific subjectivities that relate to the subject. Therefore, multiplicities that relate to my subjectivity, which is what I'm gonna be talking to you about today. I was born and raised in the city of Reynosa, Tamaulipas. It is a border town situated along a third world, first world boundary. My hometown faces loathsome violence as an outgoing result of neocolonialism, and I'm sure most of you know what that is. I was raised in a town that rose up to be one of the highest cities of terror within our continent. That's pretty scary. I was born into a conservative, Catholic, patriarchal culture that marginalized my womanhood, and I had to live with that. I was asserted by a female role I was asserted by a female role that was a hypersexualized object, a commodity, an agentless being. The proximity to Texas as a border town, resident of Mexico, led me through a process of acculturation. In my early 20s, I married into a community that itself formed part of the Mexican American culture, which is what later became to be my culture. During this time, my psyche slowly evolved into a new subject. My language evolved partially into multiple tongues, and I'm sorry if I can say that word correctly, but I just don't think I ever have been able to. The Spanish I spoke then, the Spanish I speak now, which it has changed, and the English I've acquired, as well as the dialects of Spanglish and code switching I picked up along the way. My accent alone sets me apart automatically, and it labels me as a foreigner, a Mexican American foreigner, or a Mexican foreigner, and even as an immigrant. I learned from theories such as Foucault that power exists as a multiplicity that relates from one thing to another. That's creating a universal truth of discourse, practice in the self, in relationship to society. He defines discourse as those social practices and subjectivities that constitute our cultural truths and get transferred into knowledge, or get transferred from one person to another as something that we relate as knowledge and power. Residing later, as I continue telling you my story, residing in Fredericksburg, Texas as a cultural entity has served to modify parts of my subjectivity itself. Symbolically speaking, this phenomenon happened by mixing, and to give you an example, by mixing rancheras and cumbias from my Mexican or Tejano, Chicano culture into the unique accordion sounds brought about by the German culture. And that is just like one example of what the symbolic mixing of two cultures can do to someone or something. While still in Texas as an immigrant, I became naturalized as a U.S. citizen. At this time, it was troublesome for me to cope with the rapid changes that were acculturating me. It was a battle between my multiplicities in regards to the truths that hold each one of my cultural values. This is because within my subjectivity, my multiples were not at peace. My differences, the differences between my cultures and everything that was kind of like forming those pieces of subjectivity were not necessarily happy with each other, and they didn't really necessarily understand each other completely. As my language was being reshaped into new linguistic forms, I began to write, listen, and understand the symbolic language between my two worlds. not just my two worlds, but the two worlds I lived in. As I experienced a new way of life, I was learning not only a second language, but a mixture of cultures, in several cultures for that matter. My two cultures as a separate entity were not always in harmony, as I'm saying. It was not until later that they were kind of mixed, and as they were mixing, that I kind of began to accept them as one fluid subject. And that later I learned that that was called intersectionality. Soon thereafter, I became a student and a minimum wage worker. I would begin bussing tables and waiting tables for multiple restaurants. I enrolled into a community college, the Austin Community College, and later I enrolled there. And later I enrolled at the University of Texas at San Antonio, which I'm attending to now. Going back as a child, as a young adult, and now as an adult, I have questioned every situation reflecting on my experiences and, yeah, my oppression. I kind of like invented a scenarios in my head, trying to explain each situation and why things were happening the way they were happening, and why people were seeing, why were people were having the constructed opinions about me, and how that was affecting me. I felt a crisis of recognition between my multiples, each part of me. I myself didn't know where I belonged. Revisiting the multiples of my subjectivity brings about a question of recognition regarding the self and a question of identity. What am I? Who am I? And I'm sure that a lot of girls and guys and kids ask themselves these questions as they are growing up in a normal basis. Like, what am I? And, where do I belong? And how do I explain this about myself and this other part of myself that don't necessarily, like mix, that are like kind of like clashing? How do I allow them to flow together in harmony? So as I answer my questions of what am I, well, I'm here able to tell you I am a woman. I'm a Chicana, a Mexican, American, not just an American. I'm a working class woman. Yes, I'm a student. I'm a foreigner. I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen. I am a bilingual. I consider myself to be Texan now. I am a feminist. Yes. I'm a teacher. But guess what? They would chop me up into little fragments and tag each piece of me with a label. And I give thanks to Gloria and Saldua for allowing me to use that last piece as, to wrap up my speech. Thank you.